KFIZ News Time. It is 8:10, and welcome to Landscape Smart, presented by Rademann Stone and Landscape Company. I am Matt Hinker, and joining me today is Ron Rademann and Master Gardener Carol. Phone lines are open for your questions, so shoot us a call at 923-1450 or 1-888-900-1450. If you can't shoot us a call, well, fire an email over at kfizstudio@gmail.com. Ron, Carol, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah. On this, pretty normal / maybe slightly above average in terms of temperature September, but, nothing. It's pretty dry, which is, I guess, a little unusual maybe for this time of year. We're used to maybe a little more rain, but.
I think so.
Yeah, I don't know if this is going to be the new normal now that we get it seems like we get September now has become more of a summer month, more so than a fall month, at least definitely the first 2 or 3 weeks.
Yep.
And this year's certainly holding true. Like you said earlier, we got pretty much 80s every day for the next through next weekend, and then the following week it's all 70s, or that's the forecast at least. And overnight lows are still in the 60s, and even next week still in the 50s overnight. So that's definitely I guess it's not July and August weather, but it's still pretty nice for September.
Yeah.
So as we get pretty much through the whole month of September, at that point in time with low temperatures in the 50s overnight, that's a pretty nice September.
Yeah, it is.
So, but it's going to stay dry, like you said earlier, too. There's really, there's a little chance of a shower here maybe tonight, tomorrow, into Monday morning. But if that happens to hit, I don't think it's going to amount to much. It probably wash the dust off of the blades of grass and not even make it down to the soil. So you definitely can't count on that. So
no, in fact, how often would you guys recommend watering here? As I know we're getting later into the year, daylight, the sun's not out as long as it was, but I would imagine you still recommend doing some watering.
Well, if you still have things in pots sitting around you, then you're going to need, to be watering that just as you would otherwise. Mm-hmm. And if you have a garden, it depends on, how many of your things are totally gone, what's left, what you need. So that's how that works. Yes.
Yeah. And as far as like, even your lawn right now, there's cracks in the lawn and things like that. So, and with the forecast over the next couple of weeks yet, if you really want to, it's always one of those things. Well, do I really need to water? Well, you don't really know if you need to water until it's too late.
Yeah.
Because, you put your lawn under stress, you're going to have more weeds next year. You put your trees under stress, your evergreens, and then you get winter burn, and then you call up in March and April and say, what should I do? Well, what you should have done was watered, in September and October, and then you wouldn't have a problem in April and May. So, you can solve the problems, next year's problems, by taking care of things yet this year. And with these, with the ground temperatures and where we're at right now, if you do plant or you have planted and you continue to water, the plants will keep growing. They'll grow roots, which is super important because the tops aren't growing anymore. And if you don't have to, but that root growth really helps you out next year then, as far as they're just tougher come the if we have an open winter where there's no snow, you've got better root development there. They can handle that better. And the same goes come next summer when it's hot and dry. If you've got roots that have grown and developed here over these next 2, 3, 4 weeks while the ground temperatures are warm, and if there's sufficient moisture there, they'll keep growing.
Yep.
If it's dry, then they won't.
Yeah, I went up to the kids' garden last night to water some and pick some things. There's not a lot left. But we had one bed that had edible flowers and it had herbs in it. And I took some of those herbs and pulled them out because they were, at the end of their life.
Mm-hmm.
And I had cracks in that bed, I would say 1.5 to 2 inches.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And deep, like 6-7 inches deep. And I couldn't believe that. I thought, I had been watering really well, but the plants all looked good, even though it was that cracked there.
Gives you,
and you don't think about it moving like that. Yes. So I was really surprised. So I watered it really well.
Yeah, clearly, because the plant was doing well despite the ground being dry around it or the dirt around it.
Well, we had plenty of subsoil moisture going into the middle of July yet, but now it's just over the last 2 months, really, since mid-July here till mid-September. So, two full months now have been the little bit of rain for the most part that most areas have gotten. It just really didn't, get down deep. It's kind of, we've had enough light showers to keep the grass kind of green. I mean, there's areas in my yard now that are, and I haven't done any irrigating recently now. I did a little bit earlier back in, I don't know, it was probably a month ago, mid-August, early August, somewhere in there. I just watered a little bit, but not then you're kind of thinking, as we get into September, we're going to get more moisture, but it really hasn't happened this year.
Yep, not yet.
But most of the lawns do look really green.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, I don't see
which
a lot
is surprising, and ours is growing quite a bit too.
Mine is as well. Yep.
Yes, so I'm surprised at that because we haven't had any moisture in a while. Yes.
All right, let's turn to the phone lines. Actually, we have a caller. You're on Landscape Smart. Go ahead with your name and question.
Good morning. My name's Carl from Ladoga. I'm going to go plant 10 spruce trees, and I've got some choices. I have 2 choices in what kind of fertilizer to put around them. I'm just wondering, which fertilizer would you place in the perimeter around a root-balled spruce tree?
Well, I like using the NutriPack fertilizer packets, and the reason I like those is I'm a little bit of a lazy gardener. And part of that is I spend a lot of time outdoors, and I don't really want to spend any more than I need to. So the NutriPack packets, which if you're planting spruce trees like that, you can put those down in the bottom of the hole, put them out towards the edge in that ball, the pit that you've excavated for planting, and then they'll work over the next 4 or 5 years. So what's nice about that is and you could fertilize again in a couple years, but there'll definitely be plenty of fertilizer there for this year and next year. And then as the trees grow, they'll be bigger, and then they could handle a little bit more. But put it down at the bottom of the hole, get it down there, 18 inches, 20 inches down. Since you have the opportunity with planting, get that fertilizer down deep, and then you can always put more packets in a couple years, or you could use the spikes and things like that, because those are working more off of the surface, and your spikes are the nitrogen it travels through the soil better, but the packets being higher in phosphorus and potash, that gets it down at the bottom of the root ball where they're going to do the most good as far as getting them off to a good start. So
would you use the fruit, nut, and flowering tree shrubs or the palms?
Well, those palm packets that we have available are actually, they've got the micronutrients in it. And I'm glad you brought that up too, because if you have, for spruce trees, the fruit and nut ones are actually 16. So you've got 16% nitrogen, 16% phosphorus, 16% potash, which is sufficient for spruce trees. Now, if you were planting oak trees that require a little more iron, a little more manganese, sulfur, lower pH, or river birch, or some of the scarlet maple varieties, then those palm tree fertilizers are what, and we inventory the palm tree fertilizers, not because we plan on selling them to people with palm trees, but NutriPack doesn't market a oak fertilizer. They only market, because they market nationally, they call it palm fertilizer, and then they sell those down south. So I'm probably their only customer in Wisconsin that buys palm fertilizer from them, because I like those because of the higher concentrations of iron and sulfur, manganese, those trace elements, and that's what's in those palm fertilizers. So, the palm also don't quite have as much nitrogen or phosphorus or potash. They have the other elements in there. So, having a little bit more phosphorus is a little better root development, where the palm doesn't have that phosphorus in there. So that's why I like just using they don't really need iron, and they don't really need, the sulfur in our soils around here. So spruce trees don't, that is, spruce, fir, pine, that. So yeah, that's a real good question.
Well, thank you.
Long answer to a short question.
We will use the fruit and nut flowering. Thank you, Ron.
Nope. Thanks for the question.
Yep. Thank you for the call. All right, I tell you what, we will stop away and we will take our first break. Do not go anywhere, as you are listening to Landscape Smart, presented by Rademann Stone and Landscape Company.
So Rademann's is open today, and I heard from Joe a little bit earlier. They've got a few slots open for delivery yet today, but not very many. So call in early if you want a delivery yet today. 920-922-7612.
Welcome back to Landscape Smart, presented by Rademann Stone and Landscape Company. I am Matt Hinker, and joining me today is Ron Rademann and Master Gardener Carol. Phone lines are open for any and all of your landscaping and gardening questions, so shoot us a call at 923-1450 or 1-888-900-1450. You can give us a call, fire an email over with those questions at kfizstudio@gmail.com. So those packets, I know you would discuss more about them. One, is this something you'd recommend I put under my maple with those extra plants before winter here? Would that be a good idea? And also, what about them is a good idea? What is it that you like so much about them? Because I know you talk about them often.
Well, I like using those packets because they feed over a 4 or 5 year period.
Yeah,
and so that's what's really nice is you're getting a good root development fertilizer in there at the time of planting. And the caller's key question there that, maybe we didn't emphasize real well was, these are new plantings. He's digging holes, He's planting new plantings. And the reason, even though these NutriPack packets are labeled as fruit and nut and flowering trees, which is exactly what they are for, they're also a great starter fertilizer. And the title doesn't really always say everything that's in the book.
Right.
And so they're titled fruit, nut, and flowering trees, but it should say fruit, nut, flowering trees, and starter fertilizer for new trees and shrubs. But, they can't get all that into the title.
Right.
So, you have to kind of read between the lines. And that's one of the advantages of going out to a place like Rademann's is you can, we can kind of guide you that way. They don't, unfortunately, NutriPack could actually make the exact same packet and put a whole different name on it. And a lot of the other manufacturers do that. There's with the different Roundups and Miracle Grows and all these different things, they have 5 or 6 or 7 different products, all pretty much identical, and they put a different name on each one, and then they, kind of sucker you, so to speak, into buying all of them and keeping them all on the shelf in your garage when you can really get by with just one.
Yep.
And So NutriPack, to their credit, let's just say they only make, they make a couple different formulations, and but I still like the 1616, and it's called, for fruit, nut, and flowering trees, but it's really a starter fertilizer because it's higher in phosphorus and higher in potash. So even though it's a little, even though our caller was asking about, why doesn't it say evergreens on it?
Yeah.
Well, it probably could or should, but the bottom line is in this case, he's utilizing it as a starter fertilizer to get these plants off to a good start.
Yep.
So that's kind of to backtrack there a little bit. Now, you could use the same packets around your maple tree. Again, it's fruit, nut, flowering trees,
right,
shade trees, whatever you have. And it's still, if you utilize a fertilizer that's balanced like that, you're building a better root system. If you build a good root system, you'll have a lot of new good growth off the top too.
Right.
So, I always like to work from the bottom up instead of from the top down. And
usually the best way to build something.
Well, it's, and because of my, experience in growing trees, I found through the years that if you build a good root system, you'll eventually have a good top. And otherwise you just keep pouring the lawn fertilizer on there, you get a lot of green growth off the top, but you don't have a good root system. So then what happens? The tree is kind of weak rooted, and you get a storm, you get a lot of new growth. The tree tips, it doesn't, so the best long-term solution for good healthy trees is building a good root system, and then they can handle storms. They can handle, the 30 and 40 and 50 mile an hour wind gusts that we get occasionally. They don't. And if you get a better root system and the roots grow out, and that's why, as I told that caller, get those packets out towards the edge of your planting pit. Don't put them right next to the root ball. The root ball probably has fertilizer in it already from the grower, because the grower has been fertilizing them. So you want to put your new fertilizer out a foot away from that root ball at the bottom of the hole where there are no nutrients.
So it reaches out to them, right?
Sure.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And then you put your planting mix around that, and that fertilizer is there. The other key to the NutriPack fertilizer packets, and we can talk for a whole hour on just NutriPack if we want to, or we can move on. But the other thing that's those fertilizer packets, the reason they last 4 or 5 years is, and we say that it'll actually say 3 years on the packet, because again, if you're using them in Nashville or St. Louis, they only last for 3 years because they have 11 summer months or 12 summer months. Here we have 8 or 9 summer months. So you add up those and they'll last for 4 years then, or 5 years even. And the other key there is moisture and watering, and that's why I harp on that continually on this show, because if you've planted new trees and you put those fertilizer packets and they're down there 18 inches down, the packets, they are truly packets, and it's a packet with tiny, tiny holes in, and when you water them, the water goes into the packet, the fertilizer emulsifies and comes out through those tiny holes. If you don't water, or if you haven't watered here now over the last 2 months, the fertilizer's just sitting there in that packet. I can guarantee you it's not coming out.
It's not doing anything.
It's not doing anything right now because there's no moisture down there 18 inches anymore.
Yep.
So that good deep watering that we were talking about, that we harp on, I almost say week after week, that's important, because if you water, that gets that fertilizer active down there. So you're watering down there, you're getting moisture down there, you're getting down there where the fertilizer packet is. And you know, at the same time, even if you've used the spikes and some of those other products, which the spikes are a little bit easier to use, but they're really only good for a year or two.
Yep.
Depending on the time of year when you're putting them down, and they're working off of the surface, so you're requiring the elements, and nitrogen moves through the soil pretty well. It soaks but phosphorus and potash do not. So that's why the packets down at the bottom of the hole, that gets that potash down 18 inches down, because you can pour all the potash you want on the surface, and it's going to only work its way down a couple inches. It does not travel well through the soil.
Oh, okay.
So again, we're maybe getting into a little bit too much technical parts here, but if we're not getting any other calls or questions, well, this is the time to learn about it.
Yeah, might as well.
And so that's why the triple 16 that has that 16% potash and 16% phosphorus, I like to get that down in the bottom of the holes, 18 inches, 20 inches down when you're planting, because if you put spikes in, and they can have all the potash in the world in that spike, but it's only gonna stay.
It's only gonna go so deep.
It's not gonna work its way down into the root system.
So go ahead.
The nitrogen will on a spike,
right?
But the potash and the same thing goes with the sulfur. You got to get that sulfur down low too. So the deeper you can get that sulfur down there, and the iron moves. Well, again, maybe we're getting a little too technical here, but anyway, those trace elements, and you can do that. You can mix them up with water and get them to go down into the soil. But again, you shouldn't be doing that at this time of year with those water-soluble fertilizers. And that's what's nice about NutriPack packets, is you can use those pretty much about 11 months out of the year. The only month you can't is in January, because the ground is too froze.
A little too hard for that.
But the other months of the year, you can install them at any point in time. So,
all right, I tell you what, we'll turn back to the phone lines. You have a question for Ron and Carol?
Yes, I was wondering about root waterers. I don't know if you've ever mentioned them. I'll hang up and listen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, and that's actually a real timely question too, because these root feeders, you can actually put like a pellet in there, and you can get that those trace elements. So a root feeder, again, now it's a probe. For those that aren't familiar, it's basically a probe that's 18 inches long, generally around that, and then you hook your garden hose up to it, and they'll have a like a sediment bulb in it, let's just call it. You can put a pellet in there, and that's one way to get those trace elements down deeper. Yeah. So, I like watering, and with those you can put it down deep, and then you just have to kind of raise it up and move it around too, because there's roots above those where you're watering at 18 inches down too. So you have to kind of be cognizant of that, as you can't just put the probe in the ground and walk away and then come back an hour later, because there's feeder roots up on the top. So you have to still kind of keep that in mind, that not all the good roots are down deep. But that is one way. The best way, other than the packets, is to get that phosphorus and potash down 18 inches down into the root zone.
So you would put that feeder in, and then you'd move it to another side of the tree, or
you could
four
move it
times maybe, or something?
Yeah, you're probably going to want to move that around. And also, as maybe you go four times at full depth, depending on the size of the tree, but maybe 4 or 5 feet out from the center of the main trunk. And then you could also make another semicircle or circle around in or outside of that, and then have that probe maybe only in halfway. And that way it's watering the top 9 inches down to 9 to 12 inches down. And then also then you put the probe in deeper and you're watering more 18 to 24 inches down.
Sounds like a lot more work than the packs, actually.
Which is why Ron...
I might be a little lazy, but I have a lot of trees.
Well, and that's just it. But
Yes.
if you do have one new tree or one
Exactly.
tree that's struggling a little bit,
might be a
That's-
good way to
Yes.
that's
get
the
it
way-
there. Yeah.
And the
I
other
can see that.
problem with that, I guess, is, again, now you're kind of using more of a water soluble fertilizer, and the timing isn't real good for that. You don't want to be doing that here in September,
Because you don't want to be encouraging growth.
because
correct?
you're encouraging now you're watering and fertilizing in the middle of September, and that's, now you're going to encourage new growth into October.
Which
So,
we
we don't really want to do. So you
Right.
could, you want to wait about a month before you would do that again then. So,
All right. I tell you what, we will step away for our second break. Don't go anywhere as you're listening to Landscape Smart, presented by Rademann Stone and Landscape Company.
So, as we said earlier, Rademann's is open today, open until noon today. And if you want to stop on out and visit Joe, he's anxiously awaiting you. Just 3 miles south of Fond du Lac, just east of Highway 41 on County Trunk B.
Welcome back to Landscape Smart, presented by Rademann Stone and Landscape Company. I am Matt Hinker, and joining me today is Ron Rademann and Master Gardener Carol. Phone lines are open for any and all of your landscaping and gardening questions, so shoot us a call at 923-1450 or 1-888-900-1450. You can also shoot an email over us with your question at kfizstudio@gmail.com. So we talked about using those Nutra packets a lot with, say, planting a new tree or maybe even a struggling one with the root feeder. What about in terms of this packets on an established tree? What depth and where would you put them? Is it would you put one along the drip line, or is it you put it closer to the trunk? Or
Yeah, you generally want to go, let's just say if you've got maybe a 25-foot tree, let's just say, and if you'd have, let's just say a 25-foot maple, because, or linden or birch or oak or something like that.
Yeah.
You'd probably want to be about 6 feet or 8 feet out from the center of the trunk. And then you'd do a circle around. You'd maybe put 6, depending, again, about the size of the tree, and we can help you with that. Or there's information actually on the packets, or you can consult with them out at Rademann's. Then you'd put a circle of maybe 6 packets, 6 feet out, and then you'd put another circle 8 feet out from that, and that would pretty much cover you there. And maybe, depending on how large the tree is, a circle of 6 packets or a circle of 8 packets or a circle of 10 packets. Or if the tree is big enough, you would go out even a little bit further. But generally, as trees get that big, you're not so much worried about them as you are when they're younger.
yeah,
And so usually if you've planted a 2-inch or a 3-inch caliper tree, and now those packets that you used when you were planting, now we're into the 4th or the 5th year, then you would start out with, and you want to use like a tiling spade or a narrow spaded shovel, not the one that's shaped like a spade, the one that's shaped more like a rectangle.
Yep.
Because that way you can get down deeper. You want to get them down about a foot down, because if you're in that top 6 inches, again, the nitrogen will work, but the phosphorus and the potash won't work as well. So if you can get it down that full 12 inches,
Mm-hmm.
13, 14 inches of the entire blade length. And if you're fertilizing right now, and you certainly could, because those packets are fine to use at this time of year.
Right.
And then even if you take your garden hose and you might have to lubricate your shovel a little bit to get down that deep.
Yeah.
Or you would irrigate, you could water the tree, wait a couple days, water it again, and then maybe, let's
Then
just say
put 'em
you're
in.
watering it here on Saturday or Sunday, and then you water it again on Monday or Tuesday, and then next weekend or on Thursday or Friday, you could install the packets because now you've softened the ground enough.
Yep.
So,
All right. I tell you
Good
what,
plan.
we'll turn back to the phone lines. You're on Landscape Smart. You have a question for Ron and Carol?
Yes, and I probably should have called last spring, but I've got a decorative crab apple that's 15 feet high or so, and last spring we had a late storm or whatever, and exactly half of the tree died. The buds died, and there's the apples themselves only got about the size of a pea. I was wondering if there's anything I could do.
So the branches, when you say half of it, like one side, or just like half of the branches?
One side, the south-facing side of the tree is dead.
Well, you're definitely fighting an uphill battle there. If it's completely dead and there's no leaves or no buds, or it's crispy, let's just say, if you take, the twig branch, or you could take your fingernail and check if it's green or brown, then I would remove it. And you could, even though we kind of say this isn't the best time to trim trees, well, if it's dead, you're not doing any damage or hurting the tree in any way, shape, or form. Probably the best way then would be to remove the dead part as soon as possible, because then it starts the healing process, and it'll start regrowing on that side, and hopefully, start to reshape itself. Then, once you get that removed, then I would wait here another month or so into the more like the middle of October. And then you could also do a little trimming or thinning out on the live part of the tree. And that way next spring, as it starts growing, it'll kind of start to rebalance itself. It'll push out more new growth, at least throughout the tree. So take out any dead any time here now, and then wait about another month, and then do some more thinning out and trimming of the live part to try and encourage some more new growth.
Balance it out.
Mm-hmm. And then next year it'll grow, and it'll start, it's going to push out hopefully equally in each direction.
Ideally.
Ideally. And then you can kind of do this again for the next couple of years, and it'll, you can eventually get the shape of your tree back. It'll never quite be the same, but the other thing that you might want to watch or look for is there could be some like damage to the trunk, like below that side, or if something, because there's a lot of times there's a reason why half the tree would have died, and that may not be visible quite yet, but as the tree, like next year, then you'll see kind of some indentations in the bark, and because usually if half of it dies like that, there's a problem going up that side of the tree.
Yeah.
So
I've got another crab that's about 20 yards away, and the same thing happened with, the leaves in that didn't die off, but the apples are only the size of a pea on that tree also.
Well, it's again, it's not getting all the nutrients up from the root system up into the leaves and up into the branches and so if it's not getting enough energy up there, then it's not getting, the leaves aren't developing properly and the fruit isn't going to develop properly. And part of that is, you want to rebalance that. And if the energy can't get up through the trunk, then you're not, by trimming and cutting some of that dead out of there, you'll get that top to rebalance, and then you'll get the proper amount of nutrients from the root system back up to the top. So again, thin that top, the remaining top out on that one too. And then, as you heard us talk earlier, swing out to Rademann's and pick up some of those NutriPack packets and get those installed around those trees, because that'll build that root system up and push out more new growth, and you should get normal growth and then normal sized fruit on that next year, or at least should be better. And then but it might take 2 years for it to get 100, to get back to normal, let's just say. But
sure.
And I don't know if you haven't watered it here in the last couple of weeks, give it a good drink at this time of year, because any tree that's stressed, and this one is definitely stressed, watering it right now would be a big help. You don't need to fertilize it. The packets would be fine, but don't hit it with Miracle Grow or anything like that. Just a good soaking to kind of help that root system stay active and regenerate, because that way we can get those roots growing here yet without pushing new growth to the top. And the watering would just help that. Throw the garden hose on it at 20 or 25% flow and just let it water for an hour or two. Mm-hmm. And if it's not running all the way across the whole yard, leave it on until it does start running away. So.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank
you for the call.
Yeah. It's it sounds like he's in for an uphill battle here on these trees. And, you, at some point in time, then you have to kind of make the decision, should we cut our losses and move on? Mm-hmm. And maybe next year he does see that, if the damage is pretty substantial on the trunk, then maybe you do want to just, remove it completely and replace it.
Yep. You got to be careful of the old sunk cost fallacy. Mm-hmm. All right. Don't go anywhere, as we are going to step away for our final break, as you're listening to Landscape Smart, presented by Rademann Stone and Landscape Company.
So, Rademann's open today until noon. You can still get a delivery. Give Joe a call at 920-922-7612, or stop on out anytime before noon today, 3 miles south of Fond du Lac.
All right, welcome back to the third and final segment of Landscape Smart, presented by Rademann Stone and Landscape Company. I am Matt Hinker, and joining me today is Ron Rademann and Master Gardener Carol. If you want to give us a call, ask us a question, do so at 923-1450 or 1-888-900-1450. If you can't give us a call, you can shoot us an email at kfizstudio@gmail.com. Now, Carol, I know you said people maybe are trying to bring in some herbs, or they're asking about bringing in herbs. So
someone in the pool asked me that, what they needed to do, or if they could save them. And I said, well, if you're lucky enough to have a sunroom or have a place that's really bright, you could, when it gets close to freezing time outside, bring the pot in and try to keep it going if you have the space for that. If you don't and you want to use the herbs, you would use them fresh that way. They would be sitting right there in the house if you have a nice sunny enough place.
Yep.
Otherwise, you can cut them off later in fall or whenever you want to and hang them up. If you just have a few, say you only have like 2 long sprigs of rosemary or something, you can just let it hang, or if you have a dehydrator, you could do that. And then you take the parts that have dried because they're all little leaves or big leaves on any of these things. Because you can do oregano or any of the other herbs that you have in that pot. And I just let mine dry, and then I rub them through like a colander.
Oh, okay.
So then it's in those little pieces that you can actually use better.
Yep.
And you can just dry that. Make sure it's good and dry before you put it into a glass jar, or you could have a problem with that. But usually if you can't rub it through the colander,
Not dry
that's
enough.
not dry enough. You just let
Gotcha.
it dry out. So you can do it either way. And then you have those herbs to use, or if you're lucky enough, like I said, to have a sunroom and keep it going. They won't all necessarily, especially the annual ones, live through the whole winter, but at least you have them going for a while.
And extend them out more. Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sure.
Excellent. A good little tip.
Yep. That works.
I guess I was going to just talk a little bit about like fall color here yet, because this is kind of the time of year when I get I get a lot of calls, and the definition of reddish orange and orangish red is always kind of the debate on fall color. And this year I think we're not gonna see as good a fall color. I think with the fact that it's been so dry in August and September, I can see a lot of the trees are as I travel, they're kind of going through their fall color already, which is a little early, and they're going to drop without hanging on. If we get rain, if we're getting good moisture, or if you're irrigating or watering, and that helps prolong fall color. The leaves stay more vibrant, and you get better colors that last longer. And this year, with it being so dry in October, I can see a lot of the trees that typically would turn real nice blends of reds and oranges. They're kind of turning yellow and starting to drop already. They're going dormant a little early because it's so dry. And if you have a tree in your yard, it's not too late. You could still, again, water it. And maybe you'll get better fall color out of it. But in some cases, as you're driving through the countryside, the kettle moraine and that, it's not going to be a real good year for fall color. I just have a bad vibe about it. That if we can keep the trees in good health, if they keep growing, if they're growing and that they cycle through their growth and their fall color better than if they're starting to drop leaves already. And the kind of the same thing, in your own yard, if your tree is dropping leaves already, it's dropping leaves for a reason, and that's because it's dry. So, it's not too late. Water it. It'll help it out. And if you would have watered a week or two ago, it wouldn't be losing any leaves yet.
I can attest to that.
So, again, in some cases, it's a little too late already, but that's going to be one of the disappointing parts about fall color here in Wisconsin.
Dry weather leading up to autumn here. I can say testament to the watering though, because I've been good about watering around my maple, notably for plants underneath it as well. But the leaves are plenty rich and green.
And it's going to be more like the maples that are a little more surface rooted. Now,
that's true, right?
Like an oak tree, the red oaks, the Shumardi oaks, the scarlet oaks, those are deeper rooted trees. Those should still have good fall color, because again, their root systems are down kind of beyond that drier layer. But I think a lot of the maples are going to be the ones
that will suffer,
that aren't going to have the great fall color here this fall. So I guess they're playing our song.
They are. Time flies when you're having fun.
And it was a good tree discussion today.
It was.
People should learn a lot. I did.
I know I did.
So anyway, Rademann's open today until noon, Monday through Friday till 4:30. You can give Joe a call. Maybe he can still get you a delivery today, 920-922 7612 or stop on out. We're just 3 miles south of Fond du Lac, east on County Trunk B by about a quarter mile.
Excellent. Ron, Carol, thank you so much for stopping by.